I started shooting, photography with my phone. I was that dad, but eventually grew into the passion, and I knew I wanted to document everything in his life because I didn't with mine. I felt that I was somewhat late to the Instagram and the whole photography space. And I was like, I'm late to this thing. I see all these people making money, working with brands. How do I do that? How do I do that? And I realized that tagging brands for me was almost kind of like cyber knocking.
Hey, this is Chaz, and welcome to my world from my living room. Today I want to talk about Through the Lens, capturing life one shot at a time. How I fell in love with photography, my first camera, projects that defined my career, photography as a creative outlet, and the power of one single photograph. So, sit back, relax, and welcome to my world from my living room.
Hey, this is Chaz, and welcome to my living room. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about my photography. I want to talk about the genesis of it, where I get my inspiration, some of the biggest projects that I've been a part of, and a few other things in between. I'll start by saying my love for photography began when my son was born. I felt that as a child growing up with a single mother, we had a tough road as it related to our family dynamic. And we traveled a lot, we moved around a lot. And so a lot of the joy of my upbringing wasn't really captured because of some of those negative things that happen in our lives and a lot of the moving around. So I knew when I was to become a dad that I wanted to capture everything. So when Gio was born, I started shooting, photography with my phone and just kind of capturing moments, some people today would call those dad moments. I was that dad, but eventually grew into the passion, and I knew I wanted to document everything in his life because I didn't with mine. And if I wanted to be the best dad possible, I knew that certain steps and things of me being a creative needed to happen for me to really, really see his life and look back on it as far as our journey together. So those videos, those photos really started to take shape and give me the passion for just capturing in general. Not to mention living here in New York City, where it's a beautiful tapestry of people, places, and a lot of the day-to-day that cannot be duplicated. So street photography, lifestyle, just capturing people in their most beautiful moments was something that really, really kind of started to permeate in my soul and wanted me to do that. Now, I didn't have a camera initially, but I enjoy capturing with my phone. And as social media started to evolve, and people were posting photos and things of that nature, I posted a couple of photos from my phone, and back then I had an HTC Evo. I'll never forget it. Because at the time, they were kind of deeming it the iPhone killer. Now, I didn't have an iPhone at the time because my particular carrier at the time did not have iPhone on its roster. They will remain nameless. So I posted photos here and there, and I started getting some feedback. Like, Chaz, hey, I love what you're doing. Love the photos, man. I mean, what camera are you using? I said, what camera? Like, I shot that with my phone. And people were like, what? Like, yo, you need to get a real camera and start getting paid for this because you have an eye. And I'm like, well, let me scrape up some money. At the time, I was a new dad. So the money for, any kind of camera at that time wasn't really a thought. But I really started to believe that I could really contribute to the photography world and to really make my mark and also make some money in the process. So I'll never forget it. My first camera was a Sony NEX6. Yeah, I believe that was the camera that was just before the A6000 line. They kind of really began all the mirrorless cameras. I'll never forget it. And I remember I had an opportunity to go to Russia. And so I'm like, oh, because my singing career had taken me there to sing background vocals for a huge artist that many knows. Actually, I opened for that particular artist with another artist, but being on the same tour, that was amazing. So I take my camera everywhere we went. I'm shooting as a tourist and just kind of really sharpening my eye. That tour had come and gone. I got back to New York and I'm like, wow, I really like the feeling of carrying around my camera, capturing life as it happens. So I really kind of started getting into street photography, which is really cool because that particular medium is that one that's almost like my personal Sudoku. You see someone in perfect stride across a crosswalk and you're like, bam, and their legs are perfectly, straight and in stride. And I'm like, wow, I've seen some Instagram photos like that. I think I like that. But, someone having coffee through a cafe window, people just talking on the corner of the street, fashionistas here and there. Like, it's just like, okay, this street photography thing, I really like that. And me as a father, I really enjoy capturing parents with their kids because that's something that's a timestamp in that moment where they may be just doing a mundane task like picking up from the daycare or something like that. But I really see it as a moment to freeze in time. And sometimes I've even gone as far as showing those parents the photo and then sending it to them. Those moments are beautiful because we don't get those from an outside perspective. So to be able to give someone with those moments really helps their journey as a parent as well. So some of the projects that I've really enjoyed as it relates to being a professional photographer were some that I represented brands. Now, for example, there's this brand that I really enjoy called Black Eyewear. Interestingly enough, that relationship started very organic. I felt that I was somewhat late to the Instagram and the whole photography space. And I was like, I'm late to this thing. I see all these people making money working with brands. How do I do that? And I realized that tagging brands for me was almost kind of like cyber knocking. You go on their page and you kind of double tap. And you see enough of those on your timeline. You're like, who is this person trying to reach me? So I went, that's it. So this brand that I'd actually been purchasing their frames for quite a while, I was like, you know what? If I cyber knock enough and I tag them every time I wear their glasses, they'll notice. And lo and behold, this is on the earliest stages of social media where that actually worked. I think now there's so many algorithm issues and things that particular form, doesn't work as much. Correct me if I'm wrong. So anyway, I'm cyber knocking this brand that reached out to me and they were like, oh, wow, you're in New York and wow, you have great style and wow, you love our brand. They're like, hey, do you mind if we send you some frames? I'm like, sure, why not? And so they sent me some frames and I got them, I got prescription in them through my local optometrist and I started wearing them and then it all happened again. And then lo and behold, they figure out, he's a photographer in New York. I wonder what kind of photography he does. So they're like, hey, do you mind if you do a full campaign for us in Soho, New York? And this brand is from the UK, right there in London. So I was like, wow, an international brand. This is crazy. So long story short, I end up doing this amazing photo shoot. I got some of my favorite models and a couple of photographer friends for some behind the scenes sort of stuff. And I made it a huge production. I sent them back the photos and they were like, these are amazing. Do you mind if we put them in our shops here in London? I'm like, oh my God, this gets even better. So that happened. And over a series of time, I'd say probably a couple of years, a year or so after that, the pandemic hit. And we're going through all this time frame, but I wanted to let them know that I didn't forget about them. So I would wear the glasses and I would, here in my living room, I would kind of create little vignettes and, where I'm reading a book or I'm doing something that's related to their glasses and their brand aesthetic. And so I would still send them content. And just through that relationship and that organic thing, they were able to post photos in the midst of a pandemic and not be able to create themselves. And then also I'm still on their mind. So over the course of time during emails back and forth, we're like, hey, when this whole mess is over, I would love to fly you out to London to break bread with you, to actually finally meet you in person, and also do another photo shoot. I'm like, this is amazing. So during this time, just coming out of the pandemic, I meet this beautiful young lady that eventually becomes my wife. It was interesting timing because when we met, we knew that we were going to be together. So within 6 months, we got married. But during the course of this time, I was still back and forth with black eyewear. As luck would have it, we ended up getting married May 15th, 2022. They wanted to fly us out May 18th. So if you're putting two and two together, we ended up parlaying this amazing first time trip to London for both of us into our honeymoon. Not only did we go to London, we went to Paris as well. And because I had worked for the brand, everything was essentially free. A paid for honeymoon. It doesn't get any better than that. So we had an amazing opportunity to travel and do something just coming out of the pandemic and everything. That was a beautiful time for both of us and a great experience to start our new life together. So I must say that was definitely one of my favorite photo shoots with the brand. One thing that's important to me when doing photography, being here in New York, there's so many amazing vignettes that I've come across throughout my time here for the last 10 years since I've been doing photography that's really engaged me into the street photography medium. I have a lot of friends and colleagues that are in that space as well. So there's times that we go out for photo walks. Now, photo walks are essentially like where you get a group of photography enthusiasts, professional, amateurs, and in between, and you get together and you essentially comb a part of the city, shooting different vignettes. And sometimes there's a model involved where you kind of put them in strategic places where it kind of makes sense to, create content around that. And so photo walks would definitely open me up and really kind of engage me with the community of photographers here in New York to be able to, essentially iron sharpens iron. So there are those moments where you kind of gain some insight and also inspiration from other photographers. Another reason why I love photography is the ability to be able to capture a whole story with one shot. I'll give you a perfect example of that. So I'm heading to Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Now, if you don't know Williamsburg, Brooklyn, that's somewhat like the hipsters, the cool kids, the style aficionados, a lot of those people that really move the needle as it relates to the thread of New York City. See what I did there? Anyways, I'm heading to Williamsburg to meet up with my friend Johnny to be a subject. And so he was like, Chaz, hey, come out, meet me at this corner in Williamsburg. So I said, okay. Now me, every time I leave the house, I always have my camera. So this particular day, I went, I had my Leica Q. And that's a great little compact street photography machine. This thing is amazing. So I go to meet up with him, but on my way, I stumble upon this father and son, which for me is one of my favorite things to capture. But in this interaction, I see the father and son, they're both having an individual slice of pizza. And the kid was small enough to where he can actually stand on the hood of their car. And they were having a slice of pizza outside. It's a beautiful day, I'll never forget it. Now keep in mind, they both had a slice. But what was so engaging and so interesting about it, and I kept watching their interaction to see how it would go before I lifted my camera because I didn't want to interrupt the moment. But one thing that I saw was beautiful was the moment that the son offered a bite to his dad. In true dad fashion, which seems like something that I would do, I wanted to honor my son's gesture, which this dad did. So he put his pizza down and allowed for his son to give him a bite of his, as if to let him know that, yeah, buddy, your slice is amazing. So just seeing that interaction, that was the photo that I captured that essentially was the son offering that slice to his dad and watching that exchange and that interaction at that moment. For me, that type of photography, doing street photography, really, really captures a whole story within one image. Yeah, that definitely is one of my favorite parts of photography. So if you're following my photography, you'll see that in my description, I have another page called Langley's Street. This particular page definitely deals with a lot of the street photography imagery, like I mentioned before about the father and son interaction. But it's one that is kind of my passion page. I don't really promote or put it out there that much. I reserve the Langley's Eye, my main page, as my photography page to kind of be a snapshot into my work for various brands and people that are interested about my professional work. You can also find me at langleyseye.com. So as you can see, photography is a beautiful, important medium in my life. It opens up my creativity, gains me a little bit of income, and also keeps me inspired of this beautiful city I live in called New York City. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, and share it with a friend. Until next time, have a wonderful day.